In the heart of ancient Rome, behind the shimmering golden halls and cold marble pillars, lies a love story so disturbing it was almost completely erased from history. It's the story of a boy stripped of his name, his freedom, and his very identity, who was forced to become the wife of Rome's most feared and unpredictable emperor. This is the tragic tale of Sporus and the twisted obsession of Emperor Nero. Imagine Rome, in the year 65 AD, Emperor Nero, the man who legend says fiddled while his own city burned, was a figure consumed by paranoia, delusion, and an insatiable desire for adoration. He didn't see himself as a mere ruler. In his mind, he was a divine artist, a living god, a lover destined to be worshipped by all. But inside the opulent walls of Nero's palace, these obsessions were about to take a much darker, more sinister turn. Nero's beloved wife, Poppaea Sabina, had recently died. The circumstances were suspicious. Some ancient historians claim she died after Nero, in a fit of rage, delivered a brutal kick to her stomach while she was pregnant. Her death left the emperor haunted, unmoored. He couldn't let her go, so in his grief-stricken madness, he sought to replace her, to recreate her. One day, Nero's guards brought a young boy before him. He was described as delicate, quiet, with features that were eerily, uncannily similar to the late Empress Poppaea. His name was Sporus. His origins are shrouded in mystery. Some sources say he was a freed slave, others that he was a boy of noble blood. But whatever his past, what happened next would seal his fate and drag him into one of history's most bizarre and cruel sagas. Driven by his obsession, Nero gave a shocking order. Sporus was to be castrated. The emperor's public justification was to preserve his youthful beauty, but the real reason was far more twisted. He wanted to mold Sporus into a permanent, living effigy of his dead wife. Soon after, in a grotesque public spectacle, Nero held a wedding ceremony. Before the stunned eyes of Rome's elite, the emperor married the boy Sporus. He dressed him in the fine silks and priceless jewels of an empress, placed a bridal veil upon his head, and began to call him by a new name, Poppaea. From that day on, Sporus was forced to live a lie. He had to play the role of Nero's wife, day in and day out. He attended public events on the emperor's arm, was carried through the streets of Rome in a luxurious litter, and was officially addressed and greeted as empress. The Roman people, already terrified of their emperor, were now utterly disgusted. They whispered in the shadows, calling Nero's unnatural marriage a curse upon the empire, a sign of the gods' displeasure. But Sporus had no voice, no power, no escape. He was trapped in a gilded cage, simultaneously loved, paraded, and humiliated, and yet the relationship was complex. Some ancient records suggest that Nero treated him with moments of what could be perceived as tenderness. He would call him my little Poppaea, kiss him affectionately in front of the Senate, and even took Sporus with him on an extended tour of Greece, showering him with attention. It was a terrifying fusion of love and cruelty, of affection and control, all wrapped up in one twisted, unbreakable bond. As Nero's tyranny deepened and his behavior grew more erratic, Rome began to turn against him. The Senate, once cowed by his power, finally found its courage and declared him a public enemy. Betrayed by his own guards and hunted through the very city he once ruled with an iron fist, Nero fled into the darkness. He had only a few loyal followers left by his side, and one of them was Sporus. When the soldiers finally closed in on his hiding place, Nero knew the end had come. There was nowhere left to run. In his final moments before taking his own life, he reportedly turned to Sporus and whispered the now famous words, "What an artist dies in me." With that, the mad emperor was gone. And Sporus, the boy who became Nero's wife, was left behind, alone in a city that despised his very existence. But his nightmare wasn't over. The story of Nero's boy bride was now infamous, and Sporus became a tragic curiosity. The next emperor, Otho, who had once been a friend of Nero's, took Sporus into his court. After Otho's brief reign, his successor Vitellius also claimed Sporus. Vitellius, in a cruel attempt to mock the dead Nero, planned a horrifying public spectacle. He was going to force Sporus to reenact the role of a bride in a gladiatorial show, a final public humiliation before his own planned execution. But Sporus would not endure it. Faced with this ultimate degradation, he made a final, heartbreaking choice. Knowing what awaited him, he took his own life. He was barely a man when he died, a forgotten casualty of an emperor's madness, a symbol of how Rome's insatiable hunger for power could destroy innocence. History rarely remembers people like Sporus. Their names are usually buried, their stories silenced by the grand narratives of emperors and empires. But his story exposes a timeless, brutal truth that behind every empire's glory, there are countless victims whose pain was never recorded, whose suffering was deemed unimportant. Sporus was not just a symbol of Nero's madness. He was a human being, a child caught in the violent, unforgiving machinery of history. In the end, the tale of Sporus and Nero is not a love story. It's a story about absolute power, unchecked obsession, the tragic cost of being forced to live as someone else's dream. It's a haunting reminder that even the brightest empires can cast the darkest, most terrifying shadows. Thank you for watching. If you want to uncover more of the forgotten stories that history tried to erase, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll see you next time.